You stupid thing. Haha. I didn't want it to loop. There we go. Been so long, I'm out of practice, right? Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday on this fine August day. This is August 8th, is it not? I can't remember. It is August 8th. It's August 8th, 2023. I got my stitches out. You can see how ugly that is. So it's cut from there to there. It's crazy. But at any rate, I don't have to have that stupid bandage on my face anymore, so I'm happy about that. Let me get to the comments, see if we got anybody. We got Bobby, we got Mundo Cabrera's on there. Bobby Susanbach, great to see you guys. So, just really quick tonight, I thought we'd talk about 3D printing. I know Mundo was talking last night about, about Saber stands. And, I wanted to talk about the latest obsession, which for those of y'all that didn't see Mundo's show, hang on a minute. I've got to figure out where I'm going to put everything. Kind of going to move the camera here. And you can see the 3D printer is over there printing stuff right now as we speak. And the stuff it printed last night is right here. I just haven't broken off the stuff yet. And it's always printing. And pretty much ever since I got it, it's been printing. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about tonight was 3D printing. And, I know that, Benji and, the first 3D printing stuff that I knew about was Darth Rio. Goth 3D Designs Darth Rio on the forums and, his store on Shapeways. And then, you started seeing guys in the community that started printing their own. Oh, yeah, well, I got more stuff to show you all about that tonight. So I got more of these, but this is, of course, that's going to get blown out too, right? I got my other camera. I got a plan for that. We'll see if it works out. Hey, Cindy. So I'm going to try a different camera, a better definition camera. But, yeah. So then some folks in the community, because everybody knows, the lightsaber chassis, if you buy your chassis on Shapeways, it's about $100. It can be anywhere from $50 to $100 depending on what kind of chassis. It could be more than that. If you get your, like in my Graflex, that Mentor chassis, and you get it printed in brass, you're talking about $1,200, $1,300 for a chassis. And as a result, a lot of guys started, realizing that the chassis was a huge source of why the Sabers were so expensive, and people started printing their own chassis and getting into 3D printing. And the first big ones that you saw were Smuggler's Outpost, Robert Sotomayor, and Robert was selling chassis mainly for the flagships. And matter of fact, I got oops, I didn't mean to ignite that, y'all. I got one of Sotomayor's chassis in this flagship right here. And that's, it's a simple Sotomayor chassis right there. And, that's cool. You got a battery, the Profi board's under there, 28 millimeter speaker. There's no kill switch. It's a removable battery. It's very simple chassis for the flagship. Very, very simple. Nothing complicated. Sotomayor didn't overcomplicate it. Well, then, then Jeremy and Benji, mainly first, Jeremy started designing his own chassis. But it's just more than them, y'all. Griff from Griff's Custom Sabers. Hey, Titan Gray. Griff from Griff's Custom Sabers LLC. He makes some crazy chassis, and I've installed one of his chassis, and I was like, holy crap, this is awesome. And, that's, super cool. So everyone was pretty much like, yeah, you got to get a 3D printer. It's going to change the way you view building lightsabers. And it has. I still haven't designed a Saber chassis per se, but I did design a chassis for, the blaster, the E11 blaster. Some of y'all have seen that, some of y'all haven't. And, for those of y'all that haven't, if somebody wants to see it, I have it right here, and we can show it. But the thing was, when I first got the 3D printer, the first thing I printed were Saber stands because I had lightsabers all over the place, and they were willy-nilly, and they weren't really organized well. And I was going to try to kind of show you guys some of my setup tonight, which it's up high, so it's hard to show it. But I'm going to try to make it happen. So y'all just bear with me here, and we'll see if this camera works for lithophanes too. So just give me a second here. I'm trying to start something up so I can show you guys some cool stuff. And I had all this up and running, but I got out of work late, and I am on call, y'all. So my biggest worry is getting called into work while we're doing this, but hopefully not. Hopefully not. All right. Now let's see if I can get this to screen share. So I'm going to go back to y'all, and let me move this up out of the way so I can, I didn't want to do that. Y'all can't see what I'm doing, but I'm fixing to share a screen so I can show you guys some stuff. Present, share screen. And I want to share a window. This one. Share. And I'm going to move it up. All right, so you guys should have that, right? I know it's kind of crazy. But you guys should have that window showing on there. Now, I'm going to kind of show you all the lightsaber stuff. So there's like my Kylo Ren stuff up there, and those are 2 vertical saber stands that I printed up there. Of course, my Kylo bucket. And then here, that DV6 was the first Proppy 2.2 DV6, my Mako saber, and the one on top there is my Nihilus. And then my flagship's normally here. You got the Pilo, and then a brass flagship up there. This is actually my only Tri-Cree saber left. This is an Inhale LED saber that's running Spark Color 2, and that's a Black Series conversion that I did. And then, you got my OWK, which is uninstalled, but I do have the chamber in that. And then I got ESP Graflex, TFA Graflex, and my New Hope Mentor Graflex. And then you got my Moz box and my Star Killer. And then, Stormtrooper helmet. And, then I got some more lightsabers up there. Most of those are uninstalled except that Black Series in the middle. That used to be my primary trooping saber, but, there you can see up high. But all those saber stands that are up there, I 3D printed those. So I'm going to kind of cover y'all up here because I'm going to move, and I don't want y'all getting seasick. Let's see if this camera works for this, for the lithophane. Oh, yeah. I think we're going to work for the lithophane. This is a lithophane box. And, it's got pictures in it. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Now let's see if you guys can see the moon with it. Better quality camera, y'all. So, there you can see the moon. So finally, that worked on video. That's awesome. So I'm going to close out of this. At least y'all got to see that stuff, right? So I finally got to show you guys that stuff, and it finally worked on video. I just had to use a better camera that didn't, blow out the video. So hopefully you guys got to see that. That's pretty cool stuff. So the first thing I did, thanks, Mundo. The first thing I did when I got that printer is I started printing lightsaber chassis because I was trying to organize the lightsaber collection because, what happened is, when we bought the business and Jen had to move the business in on the other side of this room, I used to have this whole room. This whole room was all mine, and I was all spread out, and I had to get organized. So Bobby says, so what's it going to take from a skill and equipment perspective to make the jump from what you're currently printing to quality chassis with crystal chambers to include metal variants? A lot more time and a lot more work. So that's one of the reasons, Bobby, that I've stopped taking commissions. Some people probably noticed that I haven't been taking commissions for almost a year. I don't want any stuff coming to me right now because I'm really solely focused on learning this craft. Number one, learning my machine because it's cantankerous. It's finicky. Last night on Mundo's Live, I had a print misfire on me. And, I'm kind of watching a print go on over there right now to make sure it doesn't misfire. But so far, so good over there. Got some pretty cool stuff getting ready to happen there tonight, which, we'll still be printing around about the time I go to bed. But learning the printer is a big deal. That's why I've been printing so much stuff. So, once I finished printing the chassis, this was the next thing I printed, which was this, Mando helmet. Now, this helmet's okay. It's not that great. I can do better. And, I wasn't happy with some of the finishing on it, because I can show you what I'm fully capable of here in a second. So, I went to go print another one, and I printed another one, and this print failed about halfway up, and then I salvaged it, and it failed again 3/4 of the way up. And, I've tried to salvage this helmet as best I could, but I'm like, nah, I'll make that like some other Mandalorian character. It's not going to be the Mandalorian, but I do have another one downstairs that I'm working on the finish on, but this is what I'm capable of. This is what it should look like. This is one of the Mando's shoulder bells. This is his right shoulder bell. And, you can see that finish on there. You can see my hand reflecting in there. This is the finish that I really wanted on that helmet. And I lost a lot of details in that helmet because I tried some other finishing procedures, but the bottom line is this is the procedure I'm going to use from now on, what I did on this. So I'm having to redo the chest and ab armor and the helmet. And, I'm learning how to do that. So it's not just I use PLA plastic, but I'm probably going to print that helmet in PLA plus. But the fact of the matter is that this was black PLA, y'all. So, I don't know if y'all are going to be able to see that in there, but that's black PLA. And then, I did a lot of sanding work to finish it. The finishing work is pretty extensive. You guys can see the reflection there. So I am working on a Mando costume. So the 3D printing kind of opened up in a whole nother animal there because, how I got into lightsabers in the first place was costuming and cosplay. I'm a Kylo Ren in the 501st Legion. And this 3D printer has kind of renewed that spirit. It's reinvigorated that costuming spirit. And so, y'all seen the TK the other week when I was on the live video, I built the TK costume, and there's my helmet right there for my TK, which is pretty cool. And, I'm building the Mando, and I've also got a Vader that's been in the works for a long time. But, I'm collecting little pieces here and little pieces there. And, over the course of years, next thing you know, you have a full movie quality costume, but you have to collect it slow and sure and slow and steady. And that's what I've done, in costuming. But I realize all this is crazy, but this is what it's taking for me, this is my learning process to learn the 3D printer. I'm printing all this stuff, and I'll tell you about why I'm talking about this, because I learned a big lesson this week. I found out why the helmets failed at halfway and 3/4 up. And I had 2 helmet failures in the same place. And it was really depressing because those helmets take 5 or 6 days to print. And when you're having something go muck on the 5th day, that's freaking depressing, big time. It's super depressing. And I found out why they were doing it, and I fixed it. So I'm probably going to print another helmet now, which is crazy because I have 3 Mandalorian helmets. I showed you 2 of them tonight. There's another one downstairs, and I've been down's close to being good enough for me to finish and paint. But now I'm like, I think now that I fixed my printer, I need to try another helmet. But, here, that's the lesson. So printing all this stuff, and I printed this E11 rifle. All this was printed on my computer. All these components were printed, right here on my printer. That's pretty powerful to be able to, print that stuff in your house instead of buying it. And then I installed electronics in it, designed a chassis, blah, blah, blah. But in the course of printing this E11, the chassis was getting a little rough. And some of my prints were failing pretty often, more often than not. And, when I first got my printer, it was printing perfectly. And then now it's starting to get grainy, and I was having print failures, especially on tall things like helmets. And I was like, what the hell is causing this? And, I couldn't get my bed level on my printer. I couldn't get the bed level. It was inconsistent. My leveling results were massively inconsistent, and I couldn't figure out why. I'm like, man, I'm measuring my, my gap with a feeler gauge. I'm like, why is this not working? And then in frustration, I just set my hand on the glass and it wiggled. And I was like, don't think that table should be loose like that. And then I felt it, and it was really jiggly loose. Like, no wonder I couldn't level it, because it was jiggly loose. And then I took it apart and adjusted the cams on the wheels and tightened them up. And then it was totally solid after that. And then I was able to get level results. So that was one problem I found. Well, then I was still having some issues with, prints not looking good. And I'll give you an example. So let me find some crappy little ones. It's going to be hard, but like these chain links that I printed, I printed these to replace the chain links that I have on my printer right now because they turned out so bad. They're real grainy, have a lot of lines in them, real rough. I had to do a lot of sanding just to make them work. And it was very frustrating. So what I found was the actual print nozzle in the extruder was loose. So the nozzle was wiggling back and forth under the carriage, and the carriage wheels were loose on the extruder. So I had a loose bed and a loose extruder, and it was all wiggling around while it was printing. The bed's wiggling around and the extruder's wiggling around. And the end result was real crappy prints and failed prints. And if you think about it, as a helmet's printing, and a helmet is a tall print, on my printer, a helmet's a pretty tall print. So as a helmet's printing, by the time you get up here, there's quite a bit of, pressure. So anytime the nozzle hits it or moves or makes a mistake, you have a chance of knocking a belt off the retainer, which was what was happening. Is my printer head would hit the object I was printing, and then it would skip, and then it's out of alignment, and then it starts printing the helmet like, either a notch over or a notch back or a notch forward, however it hit and skipped. But the reason it was hitting and skipping is because that bed was wiggling around. So as the printer is going around, bam, bam, it's having collisions. And that's why I was having print failures. So the reason I'm telling you all this long story is it was printing all these things, all the pieces of armor, the E11, the lithophanes, the moon, all the pieces for my, printer to make it, unique. Now that printer is like really crazy unique. And yeah, Loctite. I've already put Loctite on them, Bobby. But the fact of the matter was, I figured they would have put Loctite on some of that stuff at the factory, so it didn't do that. I was totally shocked at how loose everything was. And I don't think it was that loose when I bought it. I think it had done that over time because I've used the printer quite a bit. But I would have not known to look for that had I not printed all this stuff. So one thing at a time. And the first thing was learning the printer, learning how the printer works, learning what's going to happen to the printer over time, learning if I'm having a degraded print, what I need to do to fix it. And, once you learn how to fix a degraded print with messing with your print settings, and there's all kinds of other digital settings I'm not even going to go into tonight. But the fact of the matter is the physical, the hardware portion of the printer, there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong. There's a lot of stuff you got to keep track of to make sure that, your prints are turning out good. So it's all been a learning process, a learning curve. Now, meanwhile, while all this has been going on, I did design a chassis in Fusion 360, and it's on Thingiverse. And it's the chassis that's in, this E11. And, really the only thing you can see of the chassis is here at the back. You can see the Profi board, and I know you can see wires there, but, it's crampu in there big time. And then you can see my recharge port with a twist and kill key. And if you twist that kill key, and you see my OLED light up here. So now it's booted. So I did design that chassis in Fusion 360. I published that chassis on. I did. I'm gonna play with it every time I turn it on. But I did publish that chassis on Thingiverse. And I can go to Thingiverse and I'll show you that chassis that I that I published. So y'all just bear with me because let me get Thingiverse open, and we'll go to my profile and I'll share the screen in just a second. So just bear with me. All right. So now I want to present, share screen. I want a window. And I don't want I want Thingiverse. Move tab to new window. That's what I need to do. Okay. So now, Thingiverse. Share. All right, so there. Now y'all should be seeing Thingiverse, right? And we'll go to my profile. Thomas Tillman, there we are. Wilmington, North Carolina, USA. And, you know, here is my E11 chassis that's in this. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you this 360, but I'm going to try. Sometimes that was freezing up the program. So I'm going to try and keep an eye on y'all's comments. But let's see this sucker in 360 degrees. So there, you know, you can see where the 18650, the Keystone battery holder goes down. And then, you know, this is where this, this is where the speaker goes right here on this end. And it actually goes all the way in there. And this is my wire passage, which goes all the way through the Profi board there under the speaker. You can see the speaker is offset. It's more to the top than it is to the bottom. And that was to give me room enough for this wire passage. And then these two holes are for sound venting. And then on the other side of the chassis is where the Profi board goes. And this is what y'all saw in the E11. So the Profi board sits right there on that ledge right there. And then this is the cutout for the recharge port. So that's my chassis. It's on Thingiverse. And, you know, where I put that on my Thingiverse page, you know, I showed this chassis printed out and showed it on the E11. And I got links to all like my wiring diagrams and everything. So basically somebody could build, you know, this same gun off of what I shared. So I think that's the cool part. And hopefully everybody's seen that. So, you know, if you want to go to Thingiverse, you can download my thing, which is pretty cool. You can download my chassis for the C11. And I got links for the E11 in there too. So if you want to, you know, if you have a 3D printer at your home and you're wanting to build this, all the cookies are there for you to build your own. I even put my wiring diagram. I put the config file I used. The only thing I didn't do was a link to the Plector custom sounds, and I need to do that. But so that is the black hole so far of 3D printing, y'all. It's been, you know, definitely been a crazy ride for sure. And I'm glad I got into 3D printing. Don't get me wrong, but it's certainly been, you know, it's been an adventure. It's been a learning experience. And, you know, I've been having a lot of fun, but it's also been frustrating at times. You know, I don't know if this is even going to turn out on video, but this was kind of like a crappy print. See all those lines that are in that chain? See how it's really crappy and rough? It's supposed to be smooth. And this was when my printer wasn't working right. See how crappy that looks? So that's like the chain that's on my printer. And then these are the links that are printing out right now that are much cleaner and much newer looking. You can see they're not so greeny and they look really good. So these are the ones that are printing out there now, and they work. You know, they work right off the printer just like they should. And again, this is the chain that's on the printer that's, you know, with the cords, which, you know, let me light up this camera again and I'll take you over there and show you the printer. Let me get this thing going. Hopefully y'all can still see me on there, and we'll get this whole Ivy cam going. And bring you guys back in. And then let me present, share screen. Windows, easy cam, share. All right, so I'm going to black y'all out here a little bit. And I'm going to bring you over here to the printer and kind of show you what we got going on. So this is the chain right now that I've got reprinting. This is the chain that's reprinting. But the chain that I was printing last night during Mundo's Live was down here at the back. This is the chain that was printing last night, and the link covers that were printing last night during Mundo's Live. And then there's, you know, the Z-axis chain on there. Hopefully you don't see all my mess down there, but this spool's almost done. So I don't have much red left, but I've done a lot of mods to my printer. I've actually put extended feet up there to get the printer up off the table surface so that it, can more easily cool. And, that's it. That's the printer. So that's pretty awesome. And I'm going to kind of get out of that window and stop sharing. And hopefully you guys have seen that. Yeah. When you buy a printer, they're pretty much, my printer worked really good right out of the box. The test articles I printed, I don't know if I have them handy, but I'll look. The test articles that I printed all came out really well. And it's the things that, here it is. It's the things that everybody prints. The little tugboat things. This was the first print that I ever did on my 3D printer. And, it came out really good. The quality on it was fantastic. And, everything you look for was good to go. And so the quality was fine. But what was happening is over time, the more stuff that I printed, the more, the printer was falling out of alignment and things weren't going like I wanted. The two Mando helmets failed back to back. And that was tough because the first one printed out perfect. And, I did print out the first one when it was new, but then I didn't like the finish on it. So I wanted to print another one to get a better finish on it. Yeah, it's a nice little benchy, Sinji. It came out nice. That was the first print that I ever did. And it came out really clear. This camera sucks. It's not going to show you, but, there's hardly, you don't even notice the print lines on there. And that's how I knew I had a good printer. So by the way, this is an Ender 3 Max, and this is a PLA. This is a PLA printer. But there's a different kind of printer that's, called a resin printer. And what a resin printer is, basically you got a tub of resin and then a laser shoots in the resin you got resin that solidifies when it's exposed to UV light. So as the laser hits the resin, it hardens it in, whatever shape the laser's hitting it in. And so it's basically generating high definition prints in UV curing resin. And I know that sounds really complicated, but it's not. It's actually simpler than this additive manufacturing. So 3D printing with PLA is additive manufacturing, where you're actually melting plastic to make a form that, is designed in a step file and then transferred into G code, which gives the printer instructions about how to print each layer. And all that sounds really complicated, but there's computer programs that do it all for you. Now, learning those programs has been a challenge too, Bobby. So, it's not that complicated, but, you definitely have to learn slicer software and how to navigate it. And, Fusion 360, and there's some tutorials out there for Fusion 360 and the slicer stuff. But yeah, I guess the big thing, the difference between, additive manufacturing, which is like an FDM printer over here, and then the resin printing, which resin printing, I don't even know if it's not additive manufacturing, it's creative manufacturing, because you're basically creating solids out of liquid. So you're not adding anything. It's basically using a laser to solidify liquid resin into a solid in a shape that's specified by the laser that's curing the resin. Hopefully that kind of explained that to you about what resin printing is. And resin printing is its own, thing too, because you can print real high definition action figures and that kind of stuff. So, that's pretty cool. So, that's the 3D printing discussion that I kind of wanted to have y'all to tell you about that error that I made. I'm so glad the lithophanes came out on that camera, and you guys got to see the lithophanes finally. You got to see the photo box and the moon. And, I've done Mandalorian armor. I've done the Stormtrooper rifle. I've done lightsaber stands. I have printed stuff for my wife. I'm excited now. Once I finish all these additions on the 3D printer, then I think what I'm going to do is start printing organizational stuff for like my wife's jewelry, like, earring holders and things like that, as I'm still going to be trying to put my printer through the ringer. Because also I'm going to be updating my printer. I'm going to be updating the fans on my printer. I'm not really happy with the fans that it came with. And I think it could perform a lot better if I replace the fans. So I'm going to replace the CPU fan and the hot end fan and the part cooling fan on that. And I'm probably going to add a small computer to it so I can print remotely, which all that's kind of complicated. Oh, that's okay, Cindy. Loose out of the box. Yeah. You know, I wish I'd have known that. Yeah. Yeah, you definitely need to check the wheels and the table. You know, I think mine was fine when I first bought it. I just think over time it had loosened up, and that's not something I really had heard anybody say, hey, you need to keep an eye on that. And I was struggling one night. I couldn't get the bed level, and I was like, why in the hell can I get this bed level? Because I don't use, you know, I mean, mine does have the CR touch unit on it. So it, you know, it can do the automatic leveling, but that's even inconsistent. But I actually do the corner leveling method. You know, you basically disable the stepper motor so you can move the printer head around, and I use a feeler gauge, you know, between the glass and the print head to make sure I have the distance right, you know, and then you adjust the height of the bed with the turn screws on all four corners to make sure that you're right. And then you check it in the middle, and you end up doing that circle like 3 or 4 times till you get it right. And then you can run the CR touch. And then when you see consistent results on that CR touch, you know, all the way across your glass, then you know you're good. And now you're ready to print. And, you know, and of course you got to adjust your Z axis. It's funny because it's just like my wife's business. Her engraving machines also have to adjust the Z axis before you go to engrave. And basically that Z axis is so important to make sure that it's right. And, you know, another thing that I've learned is you've got to watch that first layer go down and make sure that you have just enough squish so that you've got good adhesion to the plate. And once you know you have good adhesion to the plate and it prints everything on that first layer, if that first layer is clean with no scraped up, missing parts, and it's clean print, then pretty much you can guarantee that the rest of that print, as long as you don't have things falling apart, will be good. I have found that if that first layer goes down smooth, 99% of the time, except when you had loose ends on those buckets, the print succeeded. And when you start having print failures, and, you know, like last night's print failure, I think was a slicer error. I didn't slice the objects properly, so they didn't like how they were oriented to print. And that's something that you learn too. Cinzy is a CNC machinist by trade. His whole life is Z-axis. Yeah, well, you know, the engraving machines that my wife's business uses, and Lord, it's a mess, y'all, because we've been busy in here. But these are the engraving machines that my wife's business uses, and they have, you know, Z-axis, X-axis, and Y-axis on them, just like the 3D printer. And she's got another one over here. It's like my whole office is now engraving machines. You know, we have 5 engraving machines up here, you know, for her business. So we're running. No, he hadn't bumped the printer, Bobby. It's all good. Did you see that video from him at the island? Did you see that water, Bobby? How beautiful that water was this weekend? It was crazy. I was like, man, I can't believe I'm lucky enough to live here. It was like insane how clear the water was. You know, you could see, and the fish were going crazy too, by the way. There were bait fish and mullet running everywhere, and people catching drum and flounder amongst. It was crazy. And you know, we're coming up on major heavy fishing season here in Wilmington. So I got to get my reels re-rigged and restrung so I can get back out there and get into the speckled trout and the redfish and the, you know, in October the oh hell, I lost what I was going to tell you about. But anyway, fishing. I'll remember the name of that damn fish in a minute. They swim around with rays and sharks all the time, and they're not remora, they're cobia. Sorry, Lord have mercy, cobia. I guess I had to put it in context. I'm getting old. You know, that hole he cut in my head, my brains oozed out of it or something. Yeah, cobia. Yeah, the cobia run in October, and I'd like to be around to catch them. So that's my 3D printing experience. It hasn't been fun. And it has been fun, but it hasn't been fun. It's been an adventure and a learning experience. So yes, I am learning Fusion 360. And, once that's awesome, Bobby. I love cobia too, man. They're so good. Mundo's probably got cobia down there in Texas too. He's right around the corner from you, Bobby. You got to go through Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi, and you'd be in Mundo's territory, right around the corner from you on the Gulf. Mundo's over around Body of Christ, Texas. But that's Corpus Christi. But while it's been an adventure and it's been frustrating, I've learned a lot. And now I've learned a lot, and I'm going to keep printing and making stuff for Gen and making stuff around the house. But I'm also going to start watching Solo Saber's videos on making more complex chassis. And I understand the basics of making a simple chassis, and now I want to add decorations into a chassis. And when I'm ready, and once I think I got a little bit more skill in that arena, I think Rich Sangio, Sangio, he's going to be the man as far as teaching, because I think his chassis are pretty much tops out there in the private market that I've seen. He's really put a lot of skill into there. So yeah, if I want to design intricate chassis, which I think will come eventually, Rich is definitely the man there. This is where, and this would be a topic for discussion, Mundo, is, the one thing about, Cal and the KR Saber's flagship is the flagship will always be the flagship. The threads will always be the same. The length will always be the same. So if you make a chassis for a flagship, that chassis will be there for all time. Yeah, I've watched Benji's videos too. And Benji actually is more in depth on some of the little trinket things that go inside of the chassis. So, I'm definitely going to watch some of Benji's videos too. But what I was going to say was that, like, you have all these companies that have built Sabers, like, the Corbanth Graflex 2.0 kits that everybody loves, and then those disappeared. But there were so many good chassis for those Sabers, especially Goff 3D Knight chassis for that Saber. He had a master chassis for that Saber. And it was just so awesome that you had so many chassis to choose from for that Saber, and then they stopped making it. And it's like, this is my frustration. If I do have any frustrations with these Saber companies, it's stop the insanity. Let's just build some standard hilts that are close to movie accurate as you can get them, and stay with the production of them. Like, I don't like the Graflex shop because I have some issues with them, reference to a sale that I had with them where I was waiting on hilts for over a year, and they were selling hilts, for Christmas that were the same hilts that I ordered. And I was like, so somebody can just order them now and you give them to them, but I'm waiting for a year and I don't get mine. I'm like, that was crazy. But when we're talking about Graflex replicas, you can guarantee that when the Graflex shop puts it out, or Cal puts it out, or Romans puts out those Graflex replicas, they're all the same. They're all going to be Graflex replicas. And I really wish we could get the same for MPPs, which we have from Romans, and we're getting closer with Corbanth, but then stop changing them. Don't change the internal diameters. Don't put crazy stuff in there. So that way a chassis will work for Romans, a chassis will work for a Corbanth, a chassis will work for who's ever's. And, then we get into the crossguards, and the crossguard debacles. The crossguard's been a hard to source hilt. And, I'm in all the Kylo Ren groups, and, pretty much you had Black Series or, the Corbanth V1 or the Phoenix Props version. And those things were like thousands of dollars empty. And they were so valuable because they were the most accurate thing out there, and there weren't that many of them made, and they were very expensive. And then Cal came out with the KROR crossguard with, OR, the company OR too. And that thing was awesome, but there weren't enough of them produced to meet the demand. And then, you had the Darkness that came out, which, I guess there's enough of those out there, but they're expensive. But I guess I'm looking for standardization, and for you to, I think the movie hilts ought to be there ought to be some standard to the movie hilts where they're all the same inside diameters, the same everything, so that you can design these chassis and they have staying power. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. That's my frustration. Like, how many different versions of the OWK Saber is there? Go out and look, because it's the same. Between Romans and Corbant, it is, and Parks, it's absolutely insane how many versions of the OWK are out there. Yeah, I'm definitely going to check out, Benji's channel, Cindy. I know Benji's definitely a valuable tool. So I want to show you guys something. So I got a solo Saber in, interchangeable chassis. That could be good too. But the only reason I don't like that is because every lightsaber's got different button arrangements, and I don't want it to get that similar. What I'm talking about is the movie hilts. They all need to be, a Graflex should be a Graflex. An OWK should be an OWK. An MPP should be an MPP. These companies shouldn't have differences between them. They should be what they are. And I guess that's a, wishful world. So I got this Saber in the mail, and this is the chassis of a Ray Saber. And this is like Ray's Gold Saber, the one that has the stuff that opens up in the end of it. And this was actually installed by Solo Sabers LLC. And one of my long-term customers, Eric Wilkinson down in Florida, he bought this Saber secondhand. His wife's, he's in the 501st Legion, and his wife's in the 501st Legion, and she troops as Ray. I built, she also troops as Mara Jade, and I built her Mara Jade Saber a long time ago. It's on my YouTube channel. And I built Eric Wilkinson a Kylo Ren. And I was having problems with this because it's using sub blades. So these first 5 pixels on this strip and this are all a sub blade, and then the main blade goes after that. So I was having problems getting this sub blade going, but I finally got it going. And
they're not with me.
In case Eric shows up tonight, so when you use the button, you get the pre-ignition, and you also got the twist on and twist off. But if you thrust on, you get quick on. And if you swing on, you get quick on. But it's a lot better already than, and I just did that in case Eric Wilkinson tunes in tonight, that he gets to see that. I'll probably do a Facebook video on this hilt. Now I just got to expand out on what I've done there on the rest of the presets. And then I'll be able to get that hilt shipped back out to Eric. And, that's going to be a cool Saber going to Tampa, Florida. So Eric and his wife are in Tampa, Florida, and that's definitely going to be a cool Saber. And then look, when I said Solo Sabers installed it, he did. The reason it came to me wasn't to fix Solo Sabers install. There's nothing wrong with Jeremy's install. It's a perfectly sound install. What the customer wanted was an update in programming. So I'm now, I think Jeremy had put this on OS 5. A couple years ago, because it's an older install of his, and so I'm updating it to OS 7. So, and it needed some updates as far as programming goes. And the funny thing is like that's where my value is programming. I can program your Sabers to do some really cool stuff where a lot of other installers may not spend as much time on programming as I do. Only need one version. There's only one chassis with crystal chamber for Corbant's latest 22 OB3 hilt. There's a dozen for OWK4. Yeah, but there's so many versions of the OWK4 is the big problem. And Goth 3D Eco with crystal chamber would like a little nicer. Yeah. That's kind of my thing, Bobby, is like, the big chassis makers like Goth, they couldn't keep up with all the, there's no way Cedric can keep up with all the hilts that are coming out right now. Everybody and their brother's got a hilt coming out, and there's no way Rick Rio could build a chassis for all of them. Dimitri hasn't even built chassis lately. He used to be in that game, and he's gotten out of that game. And there's really nobody in it right now outside of the small guys out here, because I think the Chinese Sabers proliferating, here we go again. We're going to talk about the Chinese Sabers, but the Chinese Sabers proliferating in the market, I think killed the desire for those chassis to the point where they're just not in demand anymore. That and Shapeways costs went up so high on them, but that's why the advantage of 3D printing is like we can make our own. But you know, can you imagine having to make a different chassis for all the hundreds of different hilt designs? Like even the OWK4, Bobby. I mean, there are so many versions of the OWK4. You have, you know, the Romans, which is what I have, the Mark I. Then you have Corbant, but Corbant's got an OWK4 V1, OWK4 V2, and an OWK4 V3. And then you've got his episode 3 hilt, you know, which I've installed one of those, but I just installed the simple chassis. But that's kind of the frustration on those. But so at any rate, look, I know we're coming up here on 45 minutes, and you know, I want to go ahead and put a comment in here for Birch, because Birchie's not around. He don't check in on us no more. He's busy with his family. But we'll hashtag nerd up. Be nice to each other, help each other out. Teach somebody to, you know, if you know how to fish, to teach somebody else how to fish so they can catch their own fish. And, you know, the world will be a cooler place full of more lightsabers and happiness. And, you know, 3D printing. You know, once I figure out what the hell I'm doing, I'll be happy to pass on any knowledge I've had. And I think there's some little nuggets of knowledge in here tonight that you guys don't have to go through the same pain I went through. And because, you know, I'm passing my lessons on. I didn't hear anybody give those lessons to me. So there you go. I'm putting on little nuggets out there so you guys have, you know, something to learn from. And, you know, I'm really happy with my printer. I'm having a lot of fun with it. And, you know, I'm excited to see what printing brings outside of, you know, stuff like that. I mean, so yeah, on that note, you know, we'll leave before we've been on too long. Yeah, man, it's been great hanging out with you guys too. And before I sign off tonight, I'll let y'all know already. I know next week I have to work nights, so I'll be doing presentations for City Council down here. I'm really excited about that. And then, but the week after that, which I think is going to be August 22nd. Let me check on the calendar here. August 22nd, I believe. Yeah, that's going to be the next show. And we're hoping to have, if everything goes right and his work doesn't hose him, we're hoping to have No Sloppy, a.k.a. Brian Connor, on the next episode of Saber Nerds. In fact, I sent him the questions today, and I said, let's shoot for August 22nd. So I will shoot a you know, quick snippet of Brian Connor. And some of y'all may not know who Brian Connor is, but...
Get him now. Hurry. Seismic charges.
Smooch. It's the test font.
But that's his voice.
Preon, stand by for ignition. Out. In. Post off. Well, that was fun.
So Brian did the test font. Now, Brian also did all the voices in the new voice packs for Profi OS when version 6 came out. So, and OLED screens and all kinds of other crap. So, yeah, no, he's done so much for the lightsaber community. It's going to be a long night. So between my standard questions and then him talking about what he's done for the Profi OS, because he's kind of like one of those guys behind the scenes that, you know, everybody knows about Fernando. But Brian Connor is one of those guys, Dmitry Stock even, and there's another guy, Boyko Kazakov in Bulgaria. And, you know, there's a lot of people like that that are also big contributors to the OS that nobody else sees because it's behind the scenes. And, you know, I'm super proud to have Brian on next week. And I eventually hope, you know, Fernando comes on one night as well. Fernando's a busy guy. But I'm hoping once OS 7's out there and he gets all his OS 7 library stuff done, we can bring him on to do a Saber Nerds episode and talk about his OS 7 library and everything else. But on the 22nd, on August 22nd, mark your calendars at 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday Live. It's gonna be the episode 5 of Saber Nerds, and it'll be Brian Connor Strikes Back. Episode 5, Brian Connor Strikes Back on Tuesday, August 22nd. That's tentative until Brian can, solidify the invite. But that's what it's looking like. And I'll do a little infomercial to bring that on and make it happen. So, I'm pretty excited about having Brian Connor on. I've always been, very fond of all his work. He does some really, really, really awesome work. And with that being said, it's time to end the broadcast. Ladies and gentlemen, get back to your families, get back to your regularly scheduled programming. Hashtag nerd up, be kind to each other, pass your stuff along. And we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks on August 22nd for Brian Connor, episode 5 of Saber Nerds. And until that time, we will catch you later. Be good to each other.
Thank you, everybody, for watching, as usual. I really appreciate y'all tuning in on my channel. And as always,